I found this wooden mailbox and I thought this would be the cutest thing to make into a Christmas themed mailbox, of course, because that's what it is. I only spent $3.99 on the mailbox, and I'm going to add a candlestick that I got from the thrift store, and that was $1.99, but 50% off on the day that I went shopping. So altogether my total was $5. I'm using 100% acetone and a makeup pad to remove the glue residue from the bottom of the candlestick. I'm also going to give the candlestick a wipe down with the acetone because that just gets all the dirt and grime and any other things that might be sticky on it, makes it really nice and shiny. Once the candlestick is completely dry, I'm going to use this Deco Art red chalk paint, and I'm going to give it probably 3 coats because red is sometimes difficult to cover. I probably should have done a coat of the white first and then done 2 coats of red on top. It probably would have been a little bit of a brighter, richer color. That's what I found when using red. But I just went ahead and did it this way, and it seems to have worked out. If you have a favorite type of chalk paint, let me know in the comments box below because I always like to try different brands to see what will give me the best coverage. Moving on to the mailbox itself, it's a really lightweight mailbox. I think it's made out of basswood. So I'm going to use the Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint and give it a coat all over. The little flag is also wood, and it was attached with a screw, which I just took off and painted with 2 coats of the red chalk paint. Now that the base coat is dry, I'm going to use some painter's tape and tape off some of the stripes. So when you're doing buffalo plaid, it's actually not that difficult. I will link a tutorial that I have in the description box, and I will also put it up here in the corner if you're interested in a full tutorial on how to paint buffalo plaid. I'm really into it this year and I really love the way it looks. So this time I'm going to be using white as my base coat, a light gray as the first stripe, black or charcoal as the third stripe, and then a medium gray as the 4th stripe. So you can flip-flop the last 2 colors if you want to achieve just a little bit of a different look. I haven't yet mastered the red and black buffalo plaid, but I am practicing. However, I have done a multiple shades of blue one for Easter. For my second stripe, I'm using Rust-Oleum chalk paint in aged gray, which is sort of a medium gray, but it is the lightest gray color that Rust-Oleum has. I love peeling the tape off. I think that's the best part of doing this whole painting technique, and seeing those nice crisp lines is just the bomb. I think I just dated myself saying the bomb. I think that was something we said in the 80s maybe. The second stripe in the buffalo plaid goes in the opposite direction. So you do the same thing with the tape, use a spacer, and then just start in the opposite direction and lay all of your tape down. The third color I used was Rust-Oleum chalk paint in charcoal. And now that's dry, you leave the tape on with this step, and that's the part that is important to remember. And then you simply repeat the original taping that you did when you first started. The last color I used was Rust-Oleum chalk paint in Country Gray, which is probably 2 or 3 shades darker than the first gray, which is the aged gray. And now again, the best part, the reveal. Peeling off all this tape to reveal this awesome painted pattern underneath that really didn't take a whole lot of effort. It does take a little bit of time though. I painted both of the ends in the Rust-Oleum white chalk paint, and now I'm going to give them a couple coats of the red. And as I said earlier, I just find that that just gives the red a much brighter, cheerier color. It doesn't soak into the wood so much, and the white really brings out the brightness of it. The last part to paint was the bottom, and it has these little nubby feet on it, but I'm going to leave them there because I think it just adds a little bit of cuteness and character. So I'm painting the bottom with the Rust-Oleum charcoal color that I used in the buffalo plaid stripe. I found a new screw to reattach the little flag, and what I like to do with screws is put them in part way, and it's easier to find where the hole is. So I'm going to tighten this, but I'm not going to make it really tight because I still want to have that flexibility to move the arm up and down. I also found this cute little bronze handle in my stash, so I decided to add that as a little pull. And now I'm going to figure out what I need to do to try and get this magnetized. When I bought this, I knew that the magnets weren't working anymore, so I'm just going to try and figure out how I can put a magnet on this. After spending some time going through all of the bits and pieces in my stash that I have hanging around, I found this cute little iron piece that I glued onto the top, and I'm using some magnetized tape that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut a piece. I'm going to set it on top of the little iron piece and then put some hot glue on it and close the lid, and that seemed to work. I'm going to use some hot glue to attach the two pieces together, and I'm pretty sure that the hot glue will be fine because the mailbox itself isn't heavy at all. Basswood is a really light product. I wasn't sure if all of this was going to turn out. It sounded good in my head, but now that it's finished, I love it. For my centerpiece is going to be this green wreath. I picked it up at Dollarama and it was only $3.50, and it's about 12 to 15 inches in diameter. And what I'm doing now is just fluffing up the stems so it looks more full. I really love the way snow looks on the evergreens, but I don't like using the flocking sprays that you can get, so I'm using Rust-Oleum in white. Let me know if you like the snow effect on your greens and what technique you use to get it done. I'm doing more spurts of the spray paint rather than a steady stream because that gives me more control over where I want the spray paint to end up. The next thing I'm doing is taking some of these Dollar Tree jingle bells. I picked up these last year and I'm going to reuse them this year. So I'm hoping that counts as not being part of the $5. Otherwise, I'm already over the limit. Anyhow, what I'm doing here is I'm cutting off the little cable tie because I'm not a fan of burlap. So I'm going to be removing the burlap and then I'm going to glue the little stem back onto the jingle bell. This charger plate also came from the Dollar Tree, but I did have it already in my stash of things and I had used it on a different project before and now I'm repurposing it for this project. So I'm also going to then take some hot glue and just glue the wreath onto the charger plate just in a few spots to make sure that it doesn't slip off. I also am going to use my black CraftSmart paint pen and I'm just going to draw some black around the edges of the jingle bells just to give them more of an enamel farmhouse look. To decorate the wreath, I'm going to use 5 of these white jingle bells and I'll hot glue them onto the wreath. I'm going to make sure that I space the jingle bells evenly around the wreath, and I also want to ensure that I have the pine cones and the little garland on the top facing the same direction all the way around. Next, I'm going to take some of these white-tipped pine cones and place them next to the jingle bell, but in the opposite direction. These little ornaments were a new purchase from Dollar Tree. In Canada, our Dollar Tree is $1.25, so I'm hoping you'll give me a little bit of leeway if I do go over my $5 budget. I'm going to glue these little ornaments in the center of the pine cone and the jingle bell, but towards the outside of the wreath. And I'm going to do this all the way around. I had purchased some of these little filler beads from Dollar Tree a while ago for a previous project, so I decided to include those in this project as well. I'm going to take a couple of these and glue them on the jingle bells and then a few on the pine cones as well, just to give it a little bit more sparkle. While I was gluing on the pine cones and all of the decor, I did squish down some of the stems, so I'm just readjusting them and making it nice and full. I decided the centerpiece would look nice with some height to it, so I grabbed this candlestick holder that I have in my stash of thrifted items, and I'm just taking a makeup pad and some acetone and cleaning it up and making it sparkle. I had a leftover buffalo plaid painted saucer, and I'm going to use that as the top of my candlestick so I can put something on there. I'm just using some hot glue and I'm going to glue the candlestick onto the saucer. I think at this time of year, it's always really festive to have some candlelight at the dining table. So I've decided to use this LED candle and I'm going to use a pencil and trace around the circle of the base of it so I can attach the silver jingle bells that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. About halfway through gluing the jingle bells onto the penciled circle, I decided to fit the LED candle into it just to make sure that I wasn't making the circle of jingle bells too snug and then I wouldn't be able to get the candle in. So I'm not actually gluing anything onto the candle, I'm just gluing the jingle bells onto the upside down saucer. Here you can see that I can pick the candle up and place it back very easily. I'm going to stand the candle holder in the middle of the charger plate, but I am going to fasten it down with some hot glue because I don't want it getting tipped over at the dinner table. For the final touch, I'm taking the rest of the little filler that I got from the Dollar Tree and just placing it inside the charger plate just for a little bit more sparkle. These are the items that I'm going to use to create this lantern. The little white box with the handle at the back and the candlestick were thrifted items. And then I scrounged around the house to see what other items I could find. And I'm using this fence post cap. And this lantern is from IKEA, which I have had probably for at least 3 years now. I'm going to start by giving the candlestick one coat of linen white chalk paint. If you take a look at the candlestick, some of the texture on it is really neat and I want to be able to distress it later. So I'm only going to give it one coat because I want to have some of this texture and color shining through. The fence post cap is going to be used underneath the lantern as a base, but it's really rough, so I'm going to take some 80 grit sandpaper and smooth down some of the rough edges, and then I'll give it a coat of paint as well. Prepping wood surfaces is really important, and after I'm done sanding, I always take a rag and wipe down all the edges that I've sanded, and also including my workspace just to get rid of any dust so it doesn't interfere with the paint process. The cap is going to get one good coat of chalk paint, and I'm going to make sure I get in all of the little cracks and crevices. This little box is a candle holder and it's got sort of a lantern look to it, but I'm not going to need the handle, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. And I'm also then going to prep this for painting. It's kind of dirty. I haven't cleaned it yet, so I'm just taking a Lysol wipe and just going around and getting as much dirt and grime off of it as I can. It has this black candle holder that has a little spike in it to actually fix your candle in, but I don't need it, so I just gave it a good tug and it popped out. I just let it dry to make sure there wasn't any moisture on it, and then I'm painting it with one coat of the chalk paint. It's already white, so I just really want to freshen it up. As I was painting this, I realized that I still had the price tag on the bottom of this box. This one was $2.99 at a thrift store. The candlestick was actually a reduced price sale at Pier 1, so that was $10. And the lantern from IKEA is $7.99. The fence post cap was left over from when we built the fence. The item that I showed you at the beginning that I found online wasn't distressed at all because it was made of resin, which is a type of plastic. But I love distressed things, farmhouse style, so of course I'm going to go ahead and grab some 80 grit sandpaper and sand the box so some of the wood shows through. And I'm also going to sand some of the candlestick because I want some of that shine and texture to show through. The only prep that the lantern needs is a good wipe down, and I'm going to remove the little handle at the top. With the lantern, I want to give it a little bit of an enamel look, and I know that was also not part of the original item, but I want to just make this my own, and that's exactly what this challenge is all about. It's a look for less, but you also want it to fit into your home decor. I'm using black acrylic paint and a foam brush to just draw some lines around the edges of the lantern and make it look like it has an enamel look to it. I'm also going to kind of blob a couple of spots so it looks like it's been a little bit chipped, which will give it more of a distressed and old vibe. On one of the top edges, you'll be able to see that I did make a little bit of an oops with the paintbrush, so that actually just gives it more of a chipped and authentic look. This tiny little candlestick I painted white. I'm going to use that as a little accessory on top of the lantern. Once I started assembling the lantern, I realized that I needed some more weight down at the bottom. So I'm just going to cut some pieces of foam core board, pop them inside the box, and then fill the box with something that will weight it down. The fun thing about doing DIYs like this is you can get pretty creative. So I needed something to weigh down this box, and I didn't have enough of the rocks. So I decided to grab this bag of yellow split peas that I haven't used, and it's been sitting there waiting to be soup, but it's going to turn into a weight for this lantern instead. Now it's time to assemble the lantern, and you might have been wondering why I'm using this fence post cap, but I didn't want the lantern bottom to be completely straight across. I wanted to have a little bit of an angle, so I'm just going to hot glue the fence post cap to the bottom of the lantern. You might be wondering why I'm not using anything more permanent than hot glue, but I tend to take my projects apart. So with hot glue, I'll have the ability to just pop these pieces apart if I want to. Now comes the fun part, making this lantern have some light and giving it some Christmas decor. So what I'm doing with these bulbs, I picked these up at Dollarama, and they were $3 for a pack of 10, and they look like literally like light bulbs, and I also thought they kind of look a little bit like Christmas ornaments. So I've taken a white cable tie and made a loop to hold the light bulbs, and then I'm going to use another cable tie and feed it through the back part of the lantern, the open grooves up at the very top, and then tighten it snugly. The lights have a battery pack, and what I'm going to do with it is use these sticky foam blocks to stick it down to the bottom of the lantern so it doesn't wiggle around. I need to be able to just open the lantern door very gently and put the switch on when I want the light to shine. I'm just going to use some greenery and some other Christmas items to camouflage the battery pack at the bottom, and then add a little bit of Christmas decor to the top of the lantern too. Using a craft knife, I'm simply going to remove the top of the box because I don't need it. Cutting these corners out will give me a nice even piece of paper that I can easily fold into the box and just use some tape to hold it in place. I'll repeat these steps so I have the whole bottom and sides of the box covered. The inside of the box is also going to get a piece of paper. I'm using my pencil to trace an outline of the box so I know an approximate size of the inside of the box. What I'm going to do next is cut out the squares the same way I did for the outside of the box, just so I get a really nice fit. Once I have all the corners cut, I'm then going to trim off the edges of the paper to make sure I don't have too much excess. As I was fussing with this inside paper, I just came to the realization that I could have just left the pieces of paper longer on the outside of the box and then folded them over so they reached the very bottom of the box. Then all I would have had to do was lay one flat piece of paper onto the bottom. If you have any better techniques or tips that you can share with me about covering a box this way, please let me know in the comments below. Now I'm just putting a layer of Mod Podge on, and I'm going to then glue the inside paper onto the bottom and then go over it again with another coat of Mod Podge, also including the exterior sides. These snowmen have a bit of an engraving in them. The pattern is there and you can see it. When I painted it with my chalk paint, that pattern still showed through, and because I'm not using the same pattern, I decided to flip him over when he was dry and paint the back of him white, and that's what I'll be using for the front. Here comes the fun part, making him look cute. I'm going to take some black acrylic paint and a foam brush and just go around the outside edges of the snowman just to give him a little bit of dimension. Next, I'm going to give him some eyes, a nose, and a mouth. I'm using an oil-based black pen, but you could just use a Sharpie marker. I'm going to do a face more like Frosty the Snowman. To give him some rosy red cheeks, I'm using a little bit of lip gloss and just dabbing it onto his cheeks. If you're not familiar with these blocks, this is what they look like when they come right out of the package. I decided to take some black acrylic paint and just give the 3 blocks that I'm using for his hat a quick coat, just a little bit of sanding to make it a little distressed. Using some hot glue, I'm going to glue the 2 bottom pieces onto the top of his head. Since I glued the original 2 pieces on the top of the snowman's head, there was a little bit of a gap, so I needed to cut a little piece of basswood that I had hanging around just from bits and pieces, and I glued that on to make it even with the snowman's head, and then I'm able to glue the other piece on top. I was looking in my sewing kit to see if I could find some buttons, but I decided to use these stainless steel grommet bottoms as his buttons. Now I'm going to take some of the nautical rope, that's also a Dollar Tree find, and I'm going to make him a rustic little scarf. So I'm going to start at the back in the middle, and then I'm going to wrap it around and then cross it over and wrap it around again. Taking another piece of nautical rope, I'm using about 4 inches, so an 8-inch piece folded in half. I'm going to just tie a knot in the middle of the rope. Then I'm going to unravel about 1 inch or 2 of the nautical rope to make it look like fringe. Then I'll hot glue this to the bottom of the scarf, and it will look like the 2 pieces of scarf hanging down. Let's get his little arms put on. I decided to take measurements and trim a piece of nautical rope for each side of the box. I didn't want it to be rounded on 3 edges and then square on 1 edge. So this way everything looks the same. Using an additional 4 of the Jenga blocks, these ones are painted silver, they were from a previous project that I didn't need. I'm going to stack 2 of them and then glue them together and then glue my snowman on top of them so he's raised up from the bottom and he looks a little bit more three-dimensional. I also then wanted to add a little bit of Christmas embellishment, so I'm taking some of these little pine pieces that I cut off of a garland that I had previously flocked with spray paint, and I'm gluing them to the bottom, and I'm also going to add some berries. Now I'm going to add a hanger to him, so I'm taking the remainder of the piece of rope that I had. I don't know how long it was, but it just happened to fit perfectly around the box. I'm starting at the bottom in the middle with one of the ends, and then I'm going to go around to the top, and then I'll go on the other side starting again at the bottom and going around to the top, and this will create a loop to hang it on. Then I'm going to add some greenery and berries to the top. I am so pleased with how he turned out. He is just adorable. This is a wreath that I picked up at my local Dollarama. It was $3.50, but what I did to it was take it out to my garage and give it a really good couple of coats of white spray paint. And I'm just going to be doing a winter berry wreath. I wanted this to be really simple and really easy for anyone to do. These berries I also got at Dollarama, and I believe they were $2 a stem. And what I'm doing here is just cutting apart the different pieces of it because I want to fan these around the wreath. I'm going to be taking stems of 3 pieces each and fitting them inside the wreath itself. I'm going to just use hot glue and place them in and then just double check that they are firmly in place. I ended up using 2 full stems of the berries for this wreath. And now I'm just making sure that all the hot glue has set and these picks won't be falling out. In keeping with the red berry theme, I'm going to be using some of these red matte ornaments that I picked up at Dollar Tree. There's about 20 of them in a pack. I think I'm going to end up using about 8 of them. I don't want any of the gold hanger parts to show, so I'm just going to easily pull those off and just use the ornaments plain without the gold. Using hot glue, I'm going to put a good amount on the top part of the ornament, and then I'm going to be placing it into the greenery and just giving it a bit of a push so it can stick properly. I love the way this wreath is turning out, but I did find that around the ornaments there just needed to be a little bit more embellishment. So what I did was just take 1 stem of the berry garland and just added that to the ornaments all the way around the inside.